you were here, like an angel appeared, and the world that I knew changed into a wonderland. Then you called out my name, looked around and I found you were gone, like the rays of the sun.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're about to get started in just a few seconds. For those of you who are in the foyer or in the lobby area, please come on in and have a seat, and we will get started momentarily.
Shade of blue. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing my mind. Ooh, shade of blue. I can feel all the walls closing in.
Anderson, Joyce's husband. And this is our celebration of her life. Derek Blakely, who was a anchor at WBBM TV, and somebody I've known for, and Joyce knew for many, many, many years, is going to function as the MC, because I've not done a lot of this in many years. But I'm going to be the color commentator. So we're going to see how that works. And it's also, in case I break down or something, I don't know how I'm going to go through this. I think I'll be fine. But if I do, at least we'll have a speaking person at the mic. So here you go, Derek.
Thank you, Monroe. Many years ago, when I was working at the Chicago Tribune, and word got out that I wanted to segue into television, one of the reporters looked at me and said, "So you want to be a talking dog, huh?" So I'm gratified to be able to help Monroe out at this time. So good afternoon and welcome to the Sociocultural Center as we gather to celebrate and commemorate the incredible life and artistic legacy of our beloved Joyce Owens. Again, my name is Derek Blakely. Many of you may know me from my work in Chicago TV at CBS 2 and NBC 5 for 32 years. But for even longer than that, I have been privileged to be close friends with Joyce and Monroe. I first met Monroe when I was an intern reporter at the Chicago Tribune in 1974. 6 years later, when I was a Chicago correspondent at CBS Network News, I met Joyce, who was working as a graphic artist at that time at WBBM TV in the same building, that old barn, that old CBS barn on McClurg Court. And like everyone, I was dazzled by Joyce. How could you not be? Tall, beautiful, that blazing intellect, that incredibly warm personality, so vibrant. I watched with joy as Monroe and Joyce started dating, fell in love, married, and formed a wonderful black family, raising two accomplished sons who you'll hear from later this afternoon. Joyce's career moved from graphic art to a far more personal passion, a creative art that reflected the black experience in full, black culture, the struggle for dignity and equality, and in particular, celebrated black women in their battles and triumphs over racism. Earlier this year, Joyce left us far too soon, but today, we remember all she contributed to our lives, to the lives of everyone she touched, her love, her life, and of course, her art as well. And we're also going to hear later, actually we're going to hear right now, about two organizations that Joyce deeply cherished and that we're also gathering to support today. Our first speaker will be Arlene Crawford. She, along with Joyce, was a member of Sapphire and Crystals, a collective of black women artists. So Arlene, take it away.
know if I know how to do this. Hello, I'm Arlene Turner Crawford, and I'm really honored, I'm really honored to be here to speak on behalf of Sapphire and Crystals about our dear sister, Joyce Owens Anderson. I'm getting choked up right now. I'm sorry. The first time I became aware of Joyce Owens Anderson, I was actually working for Lamont Zeno Theater of the Better Boys Foundation on Chicago's South Side. I was given the task to do an art talk to some of the program's youth participants on the artwork which was hanging in the gallery of that theater at the time. That artwork was Joyce's. I didn't know her then or personally, and I did my little research. I found out she was a graduate of Yale University and was working for WBBM at the time. But in the talk, in the art talk, I recognized what a talent she was. The artwork in the exhibit was colorful and vibrant, and it was easy to talk about it to the young people because, you know, they love color and that kind of thing. Her images were filled with our history. There were portraits of our people or scenes from her own personal life and the ideas she had in her head. Some years later, when Joyce joined Sapphire and Crystals, our friendship began. I let her know that I had seen her work at Lamont Zeno and that we had made a videotape of that art talk, and I gave her a copy of that. I don't know if it's still alive. It was on VHS. I told her then that I knew her work and I admired her painting skills and her sense of color. We developed a camaraderie within the group. Now, a little background on Sapphire and Crystals. Sapphire and Crystals is the kind of organization that kind of probably spoke to Joyce, and I was so pleased that she came to join us. We're a collective of African American women artists, which was established in 1987 to empower the voices and the self-determination of Black women artists. Marva Jolly and Felicia Grant Preston contacted a kind of network of women artists that they knew in the arts and brought us together to discuss our mutual interests and our goals as artists. The idea was that women artists of African descent would produce their own shows. As we discussed the name for the group, Marva suggested Sapphire. She said Sapphire to her was defined as a strong Black woman who didn't take any mess from anybody. And that was the voice we were trying to assert, and in that we would find our own spaces for exhibitions and get out there as artists. Crystals represented a spiritual gemstone for many of us. It was also a rock core. And in some interpretations, crystals were about earth and magic. We also considered that crystals represented the spiritual connection between us. And that was also something that Joyce always resonated with us. We would critique our work and identify the themes we used. We produced new work, that was kind of our standard. We created auctions, silent auctions to help collectors collect us and that kind of thing. And we thought it was important to discuss our history as African Americans and as women. Once Joyce was a part of our ranks, she immediately demonstrated her leadership and her skills in that. Joyce developed exhibition ideas and themes. She found venues for us and our work, and she curated and hung the work with teams of us, because she was a team player. She was willing and always ready to contribute and be a part of what the sisterhood was about. Her work also grew and developed as she always, and I mean always, pursued excellence in her artistic expressions. Her various series and themes really impressed and influenced us. Her Survivor series, her Skin Deep series, her portraits of historical personalities, her work with shaped canvas. She was just creative and innovative, and that's what drew us to her and what excited us about her work. And she was committed as an artist to elevate our culture and our humanity. All of the Sapphire and Crystal members were touched and influenced by her abilities and her drive. Joyce's personality, as told before, was warm and engaging. She was always ready to share ideas with us and to listen. Conversations with her were epic. Anybody who called her knew it would be a conversation to be at least an hour. And we didn't mind. We didn't mind at all. They were all epic and memorable. You came away from them with a sense of accomplishment, or it was just a good time talking to a sister girlfriend. She was good people. Joyce was also one of the first to support our creation of a book about our collective, and we could always count on her leadership to contribute in all ways that was possible. It's kind of the end of what I have to say, except that she will be missed in our ranks, and our last exhibit included her work because she will always be a part of Sapphire and Crystals. Thank you.
Here's the color commentary. The Sapphire and Crystals have lasted through all these years. One of their founders is here now. Felicia, you want to? Felicia Preston. Thank you. And a couple of these Sapphire and Crystals put up the paintings in the gallery. They hung them they curated it and hung it. Chevette Williams and Dorian Sylvan. I mean, the truth is, it's really cool to have a bunch of black women doing art and hanging together for decades. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah. And they're honoring Joyce, and in return, I hope that you honor them. The Sapphire and Crystals are still trying to put together a tabletop book with their art in it, and of course Joyce's will be in there also. And so at the end of this, we're going to have an auction. I'm going to auction off 6 of Joyce's pieces. And you can bid on that, or if you just want to just make a donation, 10, 15, 20, whatever dollars to help them towards that, then there's a QR code on the back of your program there, and you can just do it that way. We're trying to get in this new millennium. It's not easy.
All right, thanks, Monroe. Sapphire and Crystals has become one of Chicago's real treasures, and we thank you for being here to honor and support them as they have supported and honored Joyce Owens. Up next, going to hear from the other arts organization we are supporting today. And That is Dispirial Rhythms. Patrick McCoy will be coming to the microphone to talk about them. Dispirial Rhythms, come on up. Excuse me, Diasporal Rhythms. It could be Dispirial. I mean, you know. But anyway, they are a collective of Black art collectors. And I have to say, come on, Patrick. When I saw Patrick in the lobby, I said to him, Salim Muakil. And he told me he has been mistaken for Salim Muakil for decades in Chicago. So I didn't feel so bad, because I haven't seen Salim in a long time. And I still haven't seen him. But Patrick,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As he said, my name is Patrick McCoy. And I've been asked to speak about Diaspora Rhythms and Joyce Owens. Diaspora Rhythms is very honored to be a part of celebrating Joyce Owens. Now, you've got a program, and the program is fascinating and very good in describing the key points of Joyce Owens' life. In fact, I would direct your attention to the second sentence, and it's got a list of things that she was. I'm going to add to that list. She was a talker. Anybody that's been around, Arlene did not lie. She would call, she was one of my best friends, and she knew she could call me almost at any time and talk. And I would just say, mm-hmm. She would call me at 6 o'clock in the morning, and as Arlene said, you just know you just scratch off an hour at least, is that she's gonna talk. But what she was talking about was very important. She was a serious professional. And she was very serious, and to the point that she would constantly bring to the attention critiques of my organization. And one of them was that, oh, you folks spell names wrong. So I'm going to point out that our name is spelled wrong on this. It is diasporal. L is on the end of that. All right. So thank you, Joyce, because she taught me to pay attention to names. All right. Diaspora Rhythms is a 501c organization here in the state of Illinois, and we are dedicated to promoting art collecting, first in the African American community, but in every other community. I'm one of the co-founders of it. The organization was founded in 2003. And so we've just celebrated our 20-year anniversary of being an organization. In fact, Joyce reminded me back some years ago, she says most 501c3s don't last more than 5 years. And so I really feel good that we were able to survive for 20 years, promoting the concept that everybody should be an art collector. And that in that activity, we are going to promote and celebrate and encourage artists to do what they do best. Artists are usually in a situation where they do not have the appropriate audience to recognize and appreciate their talents. So we came into existence in 2003, but we already knew about Joyce Owens. Almost everybody in the organization at that time, and in fact, for about 10 years prior, we knew about Joyce Owens. She was a very prolific artist, and everywhere during that time period when there was a lot of galleries and a lot of places to show, she was there or her work was there. And she was always, as I think some of the people will later say, is that she was very, very supportive of everybody, of all persuasions and so forth. She was an absolute consummate art enthusiast. Now, we celebrated our 20-year anniversary at the Navy Pier. Our 20-year exhibition was at Navy Pier. And one of the most talked about pieces in our show, our 20-year anniversary, was Writers on the Roof, which was a Joyce Owens piece, where she is identifying the major African-American writers of the Harlem Renaissance. It's a major piece, and one of our members was able to get it, I can't remember how many years ago, but it's been in the realm of diasporisms from the very beginning. I became aware of Joyce Owens, and surprisingly, she wasn't aware that I knew her. I became aware of Joyce Owens around 1990 when I bought a piece at the auction of Southside Community Arts Center. It's one of the folded canvases pieces that she has, I was fascinated by this concept of painting on folded canvas. And I bought it, had it, and then maybe about 6, 7 months, maybe almost a year, I ran into her and she started to introduce herself. And I said, oh, I know who you are. I know who you are. I know already. I live with you every day. So her piece is one of the things that I want to add to that list. This is one of the piece that I bought, and if you have any of Joyce Owens' pieces, she usually writes something very profound on the back. And on this one, it says, Mask 1. She was fascinated with the concept of the mask, of that how we, like Paul Laurence Dunbar said, we wear the mask. She had the ability to incorporate that concept in a lot of her paintings. And if you go and look at them, even though they might not talk about math, but you'll see it, there'll be some sort of an outline around the face that suggests that this is something that's in front of the real face. She's done several shows that dealt with masks directly. And I would think that she should be honored for that ability to speak to this issue that we as African Americans have of having to live with masks. The other word I'd like to add to that list is prolific artist. In addition to calling me and talking my ear off, during the time, I didn't realize, Monroe told me much, much later, that I thought, doesn't she get tired? You know, like, I didn't realize she had a headphone on and a mic. And all during the time that she's talking to me, she's painting. I'm just sitting there with my ear turned into cauliflower. She was a very, very prolific artist. She would not be stopped. And I don't know if anybody's going to mention it, but in, I don't know what year, she fell and broke her collarbone, her right collarbone, 2000. And that did not stop her. She painted with her left hand, which I can't write my name in with my left hand. She painted with her left hand. I have, I think, 3 of these left-hand paintings that she did. And if you look closely, there is a mask on this. All right. I'm going to end up with the list includes the concept of mother. And she was a phenomenal mother of Scott and Kyle. Unbelievable. She talked about them to me all the time. And she was very, very happy that when she would be at the art shows, that Kyle would come up and talk to me. And, and he would follow me around and talk to me about the artwork and so forth. And then later, when he started to have an artistic career, I commissioned him to do a piece. And Joyce was over the moon. She really loves you. But she was a mother to everybody. She was mothering. She was, I used to tease her. I said, you're the art mother. You're the mother of all of us. Every organization, every artist, the moment you started saying anything that had a problem, she started trying to figure out a solution. So that's what I got to say. Hello. Thank you.
Okay, just for the record, I'm a writer. I've been an editor. I was up till 3 in the morning editing the obituary. Yesterday, I sent an email to the printer and told them that the diaspora rhythm, it was diaspora roll with an L on the back. They must not have opened the email because they're there. Now, and one other little thing. Patrick talked about Joyce being a talker. It's back, God, I'm trying to remember, 2006 or somewhere like that. She had a show in St. Louis. And as it turns out, this gallery was really unusual. It had been a jail, and they turned it into a gallery, and you can go in different cells and pick up, see art and what have you. Anyway, we're driving to St. Louis, it's a 6-hour drive, and we pick up Patrick, and I asked Patrick if he'd like to drive. Patrick likes to drive, and so I said, great. I'll sit in the back seat so you can talk to Joyce. And he gave me the most incredible side eye. Okay, now what we're going to do is there's a movie that my friend Robert Tutman, who was a CBS network cameraman for 20-some years or more, and I put together. And what we did was we used quotes from Joyce, from her, that you'll see. So she's telling you her own story as an artist. Okay, are we ready?
My name is Joyce Owens. At Chicago State, I'm known as Joyce Owens Anderson because I'm also married to a man whose last name is Anderson, Monroe Anderson, who's a journalist. And I have 2 sons who are named Anderson. My art name is the name that I started when I first started making art when I was in school and after I was in school. So I didn't want to change my signature or my artwork, so I opted to be Joyce Owens professionally and Joyce Owens Anderson at other times. Are many of you actually considering careers as artists, as visual artists? Some of you are, and some of you are like some of the students that I have. I have students who are majors in criminal justice or majors in psychology and nursing and all kinds of other areas, and they want to experience visual art and they want to learn how to do some things. I think it's always very good because it helps you to understand your culture and respond to ideas in a different way than you do in many other classes where you actually write. So for me, I'm primarily a visual artist, but I also found out that I'm a writer too, and I've been writing a blog for a number of years. I call my blog kind of curmudgeonly. I really complain about what artists don't have, what artists should have, what some artists perhaps don't know. I try to explain. One of my goals, as I learn things, I realized that I would like to teach people all the things that I wish somebody had taught me when I was in school. A lot of things you can't learn in college. I mean, a lot of things you have to learn from practical experience. For me, the word and the image work together to make a complete package. I start painting, I have an idea, or maybe sometimes I don't have an idea. I'm interested in my materials. I like paint, I like color, I like stuff. So I walk up to a canvas and I start painting. I may not know exactly what I'm going to come out with. And as I work through it, I think. I go away from it, I come back to it, I go away from it, I come back to it. I might read something, I might think about a concept. There might be something that happens. There was a study repeated from the 1940s in the 2000s about a white doll and a black doll. And in the 1940s, when the African American children, young children, said that the white doll was a good doll, the white doll was the nice doll, the white doll was a pretty doll. I kind of understood it because it was before the Civil Rights Amendment was ratified in 1963. It was before, Martin Luther King, was before a lot of changes in equal rights in the country. So I can understand that a child in the 40s might think that the black doll was the bad doll, the black doll was the unattractive doll. But I couldn't understand that in 2000. So as a result of that, I was so incensed by it that I made some dolls of my own that I called Girls Like Me, and they're dolls with afros and curly hair. And it was just my response to it. And so a lot of times I'm responding to political ideas, political concepts. What I find is that Woman Made exemplifies all the things that my mother told me when I was growing up that I should do. They volunteer, they support other women, they speak up, they do all the things that my mother told me that a woman should do. Until we don't have to talk about women's institutions, as we don't have to talk about men's institutions, when we can eliminate those things and women are just accepted as part of the fabric of fine art in the world, a place like Woman Made is going to be vital to the world and especially to us in Chicago. As we know in this country, race is a huge issue. For me, I had to deal with not only race but also women issues with being a woman. In the art world especially, that's one of the Girls Like Me. In the art world especially, I've been involved with the Women's Caucus for the Arts and a gallery called Woman Made in Chicago and other women's organizations. I'm part of a group called Sapphire and Crystals.
We're here today in one of your capacities as art director, curator of the Chicago State Gallery. Can you tell us a little bit about what's been happening here, why it's so exciting that people are talking about it?
Well, today, as a matter of fact, we're having an opening reception for Robert Sinstack, also known as Bobby Sinstack, whose family owned until very recently the Chicago Defender. He's a noted photographer. His photographs have been seen all over the world. We were able to get him to exhibit works.
You are, of course, a revered artist, professor, curator, and the list goes on. Many of the collectors and artists like myself respect you as one of our, I guess you could say, foundation iconic artists, living but still doing it for the community. What do you feel is one of the most important pieces or elements that Robert's exhibition brings to this gallery?
I think it's his exhibition, especially selecting images from the 60s and the 70s primarily, that include photographs of people that our students may never have seen in person, of course, but some of whom, like for example, Dr. Martin Luther King is presented in a couple of photos here. And of course, he died before most of our students were born. Then there's a photograph, and I asked a lot of the students as they were coming back and forth when I was working in the gallery, if they recognize this particular person. And there's a photograph of Joe Louis with the boxer, the brown bomber, with Fidel Castro. And so the question is, how did Joe Louis and Fidel Castro end up in a photograph together? Well, except for Milligan, where all kinds of amazing things happen. And I agonized. I was thinking about doing a painting of my mother, my great-grand-aunts. I was looking at Margaret Burroughs. I was looking at Black Venuses. I was thinking and thinking and thinking. But I was also reading a book about slavery and stories of slaves. And I was also reading a book about the secret codes in African-American quilts. The encoded messages that slaves presented to escape to the Underground Railroad and escape from the plantations. It's a fascinating book if you haven't read it. It's just amazing. So I sort of incorporated the two things. I was in a book about the slave stories. There were pictures of these people who had survived slavery, and I'm telling you, it was just amazing to see them standing on their feet. I mean, like I just could, you can't even think. And I started this months ago. So when we had the World Trade Center and Pentagon occurrences, I was already involved in painting these. But I ended up entitling them American Heroes 1 and 2, Slavery Survivors, because even though I know this is a horrific event, we all know it's a horrific event, there were generations of people who lived horrific lives. And so when I saw these individual black and white photographs of these survivors, and they're standing there, their backs are straight, and they look human, I had to try to paint them. And I still, I almost want to take these back and work more. The women are really, I felt that, we all talk about how spirits and all that kind of thing, and I did really feel a relationship to them, and that's why I decided to paint them. And the little squigglies and circles and triangles are taken from the quilts. Sometimes there were actually maps sewn onto the quilts because slaves didn't know anything but the plantation. They never left. They were born. Many of them were born on the plantations and died on the plantations. But those who wanted to escape had to know how to go. And so somehow outsiders got them the information. They made maps. They would show you which direction you should go in. If you should go north, there would be a configuration with brighter materials or more emphatic materials that would point north. If you're supposed to go west, all this information is on these quilts. And sometimes the quilts even look confused, and people assumed that it was sloppy handiwork, but it wasn't. It was every single thing was a message, and we can document it by looking at, I don't want to talk so much, I'm going to stop in a second. But we can document it. It relates to secret societies in Africa that existed in Africa. Some of the same symbology was found in there. And we see the Eastern Star. You have to read the book. Okay, read the book. One thing I wanted to say, and I'll really shut up. I just have to read this book. Even though your stomach be full, and does you have plenty clothes, that bullwhip on your back hide make you forget the good part. There weren't any happy slaves. And so that's what my paintings are about.
Wow, isn't that something? It's really something. To be in Joyce's presence again, to hear her voice, to see the force of her personality, it's just amazing. And I have to really credit the hard work of the executive producers of that video, Robert Tutman, former CBS News cameraman who I worked with for many years. He's here somewhere, but he's, where are you? There's Bob. Stand up, Bob. Stand up. Wonderful job. And of course, working in collaboration with Monroe Anderson. That's a great tribute that will live on for many, many years. So up next, we're going to bring to the podium one of Joyce's very best friends, someone she met in high school, and someone who was her college roommate at Howard University and a friend for life. Jamaris, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. No, I screwed it up, but she'll correct me when she gets up here. I'm not doing too good on the names today. Okay. Well, she's giving me grace, and now she'll give you her words.
Such a privilege to be here this afternoon.
To speak right.
Thank you. Okay. Everybody can hear me? Okay. Privileged to be here this afternoon to salute and celebrate the life of Joyce Owens Anderson, my forever friend. Some of the things I've heard today are so hysterical about Joyce talking. I thought that was unique to she and I, but obviously not. Joyce and I are not sisters by birth, but we knew from the beginning that we were sisters by heart. We met in the 10th grade at Germantown High School, which was a co-ed high school, but we met because somebody had the presence of mind to create a girls' lunchroom, only girls. And that's where we met, in the girls' lunchroom at Germantown High School, where you could kind of get away from the madness for a minute or two. So that was the beginning of a friendship and many, many hours of conversation. As everybody already now knows, Joyce likes to talk. And this literally went on forever. And at that time, when we were in 10th grade, there was no call waiting. You know, you on the phone, and if somebody was calling, it was busy. And so our conversations usually ended with somebody from one of our families saying, "Get off the phone." But we continued that practice into adulthood. We went on from Germantown High School to Howard University. And our first year, we were not roommates. We were victims of other crazy roommates. And just imagine your worst roommate nightmare, that was our situation. But on our next year together, we roomed together at Truth Hall at Howard. And then after our sophomore year, we moved off campus to an apartment where we stayed until graduation. We had our share of college experiences and antics, some of the wonderful concerts and talent shows. At the time we were there, the operatic diva Jessie Norman was a student at Howard, so we got to hear her, Donny Hathaway, so many fabulous concerts. And we had our share of crazy exploits. One I'll tell you about. When we missed curfew one night, and we were climbing in the window of the snack bar, only to be greeted by the house mother. But we have great conversational skills, so everything was okay. But we really were by the rules girls. And as adults, when we think about and talked about our time at Howard, we reminisce that we would always call our moms if we wanted to do a certain thing or go a certain place. And as adults, we thought, well, now who does that? But us, we did. Although sometimes we didn't always follow the instructions, but we did always call. We don't really know why to this day. Well, yes, we do, I guess. Joyce enjoyed the instruction and mentorship of many illustrious professors at Howard. One of her favorites, Lois Mailou Jones, David Driscoll. And it was the 60s when we were there. And the civil rights movement and the students' rights movements were at the forefront, and so was Joyce, demonstrating And if you remember when the A building was taken over by the students at Howard University, Joyce was in the building. So her commitment to civil rights, racial equality, human rights, her unparalleled empathy, compassion, and care and love for others continued, as you've heard already, through her lifetime. Joyce never met a stranger, as evidenced by everyone in this room, and she cherished many lifelong friendships. She positively impacted many, many lives through her kind words and actions and through her fantastic artworks, which we've seen and heard about, the sculptural pieces, the masks, the paintings, and even jewelry. So many different things that she was just a creative force. And her artwork radiated her beliefs about race, as she's told you, gender, and the human condition. In addition to creating art, she was an associate professor at Chicago State, and I can tell you that she dearly, dearly loved her students. We talked about them often, and she cared about cultivating talent, and she also cared about cultivating their confidence so that they could move and function and be successful in the world. As we all know, because we've heard it and we've experienced it and seen it, Joyce was very empathetic and caring and real, just absolutely a real personality. But most importantly, Joyce loved Monroe Anderson and their sons, Scott and Kyle, passionately and unconditionally. And they were fortunate and are fortunate to have had such a wife, such a mom, for such a long time. Everyone has a friend at various stages of life, but it's really luck and blessing to have the same friend all of your life. And I'm very blessed and happy to be able to say that Joyce Owens Anderson was a very, very, very best friend of mine. Thank you so much.
Okay, a little more color conversation here. Jamaris is a lawyer. She's retired now, but she's been a lawyer in Atlanta for a number of years. And whenever Joyce had a problem in her art, with somebody to pay her, or they were trying to take legal advantage of her or something, she'd get on the phone to Jamaris instead of talking the girls' talk that they had been doing since 10th grade. She would want to talk business. And Jamaris would give her her professional advice or tell her where she could get it. And then Joyce was on to taking care of business. And so Jamaris was a good friend in more ways than one.
And thanks again for making the journey from Atlanta to pay tribute to Joyce. A 6 decades friendship is definitely something to be cherished, especially if it's someone as special as Joyce, and we do appreciate your dedication to her. And it's time now to hear from Juarez Hawkins. She teaches at Chicago State and is a member of Sapphire and Crystals, and also a close friend of Joyce. So Juarez, please come to the microphone.
Good afternoon. I have to admit I'm in a state of, whether you call it cognitive dissonance or deep denial, but I am having a hard time really wrapping my mind around the fact that Joyce physically is no longer with us. I just needed to say that. I've been working on notes and trying to figure out what I was going to say. And then my partner was like, well, why are you trying to come up with notes? Just speak from your heart. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't want to miss nothing. Because, stuff comes up, and he's like, well, you can't be rattling around a bunch of papers and stuff. That's kind of gauche, so, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. Sometimes I like to chat with the husbands of artists because all of you all who are married to an artist know we're very dynamic women, and after events we're always chatting and people are always pulling at us and so on. And I had suggested the idea of like a support club for artistic husbands so that they'd have something to do while their wives were busy and tied up with all of our fans and the people who loved our work. And one time, I don't know whether Monroe will remember this, but I asked them one time, I said, how did you and Joyce meet? Just out of curiosity. And his face just lit up like a Christmas tree. He was just all giggles. And he talked about how he met her, how they worked together in journalism and the media. And one thing that always stood out that he said, I really love that she was tall. And we talk about how much Joyce loved to expostulate in things, but she was also like 5'12". Considering that I am 5'4", she was a giant to me. And in many ways than one, she was literally and figuratively the big sister I never had. I have 2 brothers, so I didn't have that joy of having a sister until I came on board with Sapphire and Crystals. I had known Joyce for a number of years prior to working at Chicago State. I came on board in 2006. Joyce had a hand in campaigning for me to get that job in the first place, so I have her to thank for that. She also campaigned for me getting more money. She always felt like, yeah, you should be getting paid more. They should be paying you for your labor and your loyalty. She was forever the critic and forever the crusader. I cut my teeth as a curator kind of accidentally. I worked as her graphic designer over the years that she was curator for the President's Gallery. And she was a pretty easy client to work with. I'd be like, yo, Joyce, we're gonna do this Robert Stingstack show, and since his work is in black and white, let's put out 4 different postcards. Let's not just do 1, let's do 4. And she'd be like, yeah, let's do that. So those of you who remember that exhibition, there were 4 postcards. She was just such a mellow client. But in the process, I was exposed to so many different artists, not only Bobby Singstack, but Judith Hernandez, Amanda Williams, many of us know Julian Williams. Just the list runs on of all of these people that she brought to Chicago State because she felt that it was important to have a strong gallery program to encourage the students that we were dealing with, that they needed to see professionals in action. And most importantly, they needed to see African American professionals in action. So tirelessly, even though she might, wax less than poetic about having to climb up ladders and hang up all these pieces and so on, she really created a very strong and very robust gallery program at Chicago State. I cut my own curatorial teeth working with her, sometimes assisting. And when she stepped down and retired, I took over her spot for a hot minute. So I hope I did you proud, sis. I tried. I tried. She was a tireless crusader for Sapphire and Crystals. I think Artie mentioned how many exhibitions she helped us get into, how many shows she helped curate, and she was always about us looking our best. Between her and Marva, you bet not have any dust on your work. You bet not have a frame out of place, because she will let you know. Very politely with a beautiful smile on her face, but she will let you know, yeah, baby, you ain't coming correct, okay? And I miss all that sunshine. It's like seeing the film again just kind of reminded me just how sunny she was, how much of a smile she always brought into a room. Hey, Maurice! And I just always loved that. And she was a good person to bounce ideas off as a teacher. When I first started teaching at Chicago State, this was my first real experience teaching college. I had been teaching children in other settings. And I asked her, I said, well, what would you say is probably the best advice that I can take as an aspiring teacher here? And she said, Just be yourself for one, and don't ever forget why these students are here. And that's always stood out in my mind, because sometimes, if you ever taught at Chicago State, some of our students can be a little challenging. But it was always in the back of my mind, never forgetting why they are here, that these are young people that are trying to better themselves, are trying to move forward in life for the most part. I was always struck by her discipline. She told me that she worked every day. Let's take that in for a minute. How many things do we do every day? You brush your teeth, you wash your face every day. But to have this daily discipline, on top of being an educator, curator, wife, and mother, that she made that time daily to get into her studio and work. I'm still kind of amazed by it. I'm still awed, and one day, maybe when I grow up, I'll have that kind of discipline, but something to really be admired. So she was a multitasker for Chicago State. She was a multitasker for Sapphire and Crystals. She was a multitasker as a friend, always a campaigner, a crusader, a critic, but also a cheerleader, someone who's always very supportive. She came to my thesis performance, and I'm like, who knew, that she'd be in the audience. Different exhibitions, I could count on her being there. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time because, the phone says, I'm out of notes. But just to put a little bit on the table, the Survivor series, several of which you see in the exhibition, are also on display at 51st Street. There is an underpass, a Metro underpass, between Lake Park and Cornell, so you can always see them. What always blows my mind, I was recently writing about her for a recent essay, was how deep the extent of her research was. Because for those Survivor series, if you go online, look at the Library of Congress, there's about 500 of them, plus. That's a conservative estimate. So for every 500 photos, there were narratives for each one. So going through all those stories, going through all those narratives, and deciding which one she was going to share with the world is just nothing short of amazing. So do check them out on 51st. They're larger than life, just as my friend was larger than life. Ashe.
The thing about Juarez is that she is an extraordinary teacher. Joyce monitored her class one day, and she came home and she said, Juarez is an incredible teacher. She acts out for the students. She sings. She said, this is an art class, but you would think it was a play or something, the way she does it. And she has them sitting on the edge of their seat. She was so impressed with that. It's good to see that. Okay.
As you can tell, Chicago State was a very big part of Joyce Owens' life and reflected her dedication to Black art and the education, arts education for Black students. Joyce could have taught a lot of places. She had an MFA from Yale. She could have big-timed it and say I'm teaching at the Art Institute, or I'm teaching at some other rarefied arts institution, but she really wanted Black students to have the benefit of her knowledge and her passion. Rachel Lindsay was Joyce's dean at Chicago State University, as well as her friend. She was also involved in the commissioning of an artist to do the official portrait for the naming of the school's library after the iconic Gwendolyn Brooks. And so now we'll hear from her, Rachel Lindsay.
Good afternoon. I was dean when Joyce came to my office. People would just show up sometimes without an appointment, and that was okay. And I knew it was bad when they would sit out in the waiting area to speak to me. Sometimes they would come and say, tell her I'll call her, or I'll call back, or tell her to call me. But if they waited, it was bad. And Marva and Joyce were two people who would do that. But she advocated for Juarez and told me how great Juarez was. And this would have been after she had advocated to the department chair at the time, which was Robert Weitz, a friend of Tutman's. I feel like I know Tutman because his name was evoked so many times. It was indeed an experience to have known Joyce, and my comments will sometimes vacillate between past and present because as I look at that photograph there, it feels to me that she's here. It feels to me that she's watching. It feels to me that she is looking for people's comments and responses to the event, and at the same time, she's building up her own commentary about how this is going. So it is a privilege to speak in honor of Joyce Owens Anderson. She always admired as curator and evoked the responsibility to present a breadth of Black art, but also other artists. And she introduced me to so many artists, and I'm so privileged that I had that opportunity. She was highly respected, as Juarez indicated, by faculty and colleagues, and students recognize and appreciate the commitment that she demonstrated when she taught them and the truths that she communicated to them, sometimes truths that they preferred not to hear. The same applies for her colleagues. She often communicated truths that they did not want to hear. And on occasion, the same happened with me. But I, like so many others, valued her as an artist and a friend, and has been commented, she is prolific. If she doesn't answer the phone, it's because she's steeped, but more than likely, she will answer the phone because, as had been described, she knew how to multitask. But the priority for her was always being a mother and a wife, and therefore, in the conversations that you might have with her for an hour, she often referenced them. And so that if you did not actually grow up with them and meet them, you knew them. So I knew both of her sons before I met you. It was because of her input that two things happened that are pivotal at Chicago State. One was the selection of Richard Hunt to be the sculptor for the major piece on campus. And I can't imagine how it would not, I can't imagine how the campus would be without that sculpture. To manage a group of people who had their own opinions, and the various individuals, the sculptors who applied to do that piece, she managed it perfectly. And on the side, she might give advice, but she remained neutral. And hence, we made the best selection possible. The other thing that is important to note and has always been commented about is the piece that she did in honor of naming of the library after Gwendolyn Brooks. As you might suspect, Hakeem Adabudi was an advocate for naming the library after Miss Brooks. And because of that input, that decision was finally made after some time. But what's also important is that when it came time to make that selection of who would do that portrait of Miss Brooks, the decision was made without discussion. There was absolutely no need to have a conversation. There was no need to extend who might else do it. It was always going to be Joyce. Initially, Nora Brooks Blakely was supposed to give this commentary. Unfortunately, Nora could not be here because of another commitment. But she was asked to identify some poems that her mother wrote that she thought might be appropriate in talking about Joyce. They are not directly about Joyce. They are from poems about other people, which I'll mention, but they represent Joyce. I cannot and will not try to speak as Gwendolyn Brooks would if she were here reading her own poems. It was very unique, but I will try to convey the sentiments that Miss Brooks had when she did these poems. The first one is the Chicago Picasso. Does man love art? Man visits art but squirms. Art hurts. Art urges voyages. And it is easier to stay at home, the nice beer ready. In common rooms, we belch or sniff or scratch or raw. But we must cook ourselves and style ourselves for art. Who is a requiring courtesan? We squirm. We do not hug the Mona Lisa. We may touch or tolerate an astounding fountain or a horse and rider, at most, another lion. Observe the tall cold of a flower, which is innocent and as guilty, as meaningful, and as meaningless as any other flower in the Western world, in the Western field. The next one is about art. That is the title. Art can survive the last bulge of the last bureaucrat, can survive the inarticulate choirs of maketeers, the stolid in stately places, all flabby gallantries, all that will fall. Lending our strength to keep art breathing, we doubly extend, refined, we clarify, leading ourselves, the halt, the harried, through the icy carols and bayonets of this hour, the divisions, vanities, the bent flowers of this hour. We hail what heals and sponsors and restores. And the last poem only a portion is about Jane Addams. But I think Nora particularly liked the part that I will read. I shall tell you a thing about giants that you do not wish to know. Giants look in mirrors and see almost nothing at all. But they leave their houses nevertheless. They lurch out of the doors to reach you, the other stretchers and strained. Thank you.
This is how much Joyce loved Chicago State. I was trying to encourage her to go work at Columbia College, which was downtown. I had taught there off and on for a couple of times. And the art scene at Columbia is incredible. So I said, you need to be there with the other artists. And Joyce says, no, but I can't leave my students. My students, these black students, they're just so incredible. Like, she come home with stories about how she mothered the students, even though she wasn't supposed to according to campus laws. There was this one girl who came in who had obviously been beaten by her boyfriend, abused. And Joyce took her to the nurse and said, you can't do this. And the girl was trying to explain how she might have deserved it or something. She said, no, she says, if I hit my husband, he's not going to hit me back. I was glad she didn't test that theory.
Art imitating life. Anyway. Of course, this is a celebration of Joyce Owens' life, an incredible life, a vibrant life, and the celebration without music would be anything but. So let's hear now from jazzman Charles Ellison, who, speaking of college roommates, was Monroe's roomie at Indiana University way back in the 60s. That's the 1960s, not the Charles?
I'm really delighted to be here to share in this celebration of Joyce's life. Monroe is my best friend, and Joyce was so dear to me. I had a conversation with her. I remember our last conversation. It went on for about an hour. It was very, very beautiful. And Monroe's family is just an incredible family. When I would go there, the boys, Scott and Kyle, would come into my room. I'd hear the door open. I'd be sleeping. They'd come in and they'd jump on the bed, and one of them said, pull his eyes open. So I said, no, you don't wake him up. No, yeah, go on and do it. Pull his eyes open. And so they would do it, and I'd be, it was a little thing that we'd do, and it was just wonderful. It was just wonderful. So Money asked me to play, and I said, well, I'll do something. I want to, first of all, just say something about Chicago and its musical environment. This city has produced some of the greatest musicians on the earth, of all genres. I live in Montreal, and I can talk about all of the great musicians from here. All of the great jazz, rhythm and blues, gospel, everything. So be proud, please be proud of the musicians that your community has produced and is still producing. Now, I'm going to perform with my university colleague, Mr. Eric Hochberg, on double bass. I haven't seen him in how many years, Eric? 40 years. 40 years, okay? And so we're going to play some music for you. First of all, I'm going to read a poem by Horace Silver. Horace Silver was a great pianist and band leader, quintessential composer. Next, we're going to do a piece by Duke Ellington called Heaven from his third sacred music concert written for Alice Babs of Sweden. And we'll conclude our section of the program with a tune called Stablemates, which is by Mr. Benny Golson of Philadelphia, Joyce's hometown. Now, the arrangement of Stablemates we're going to do is inspired by a Chicago musician, Marquise Hill, trumpet player Marquise Hill. So we'll begin with Peace. I speak music. I speak music, the international language. I speak and people everywhere understand me. I speak and people listen. I speak and people dance. I speak and people sing. I speak and people pat their feet and clap their hands. Occasionally I speak and people cry. But more often when I speak, I bring joy, happiness, and uplift. I speak music, the universal language. I speak and the universe speaks to me. I speak and the universe speaks through me. I speak music, the personal language of my soul. I seek music that will change the blues with my soul to a rhapsody. I speak the music of my thought. I speak the music of my word. I speak the music of my deed. I speak the music of my soul, which is continually being composed and decomposed and arranged and rearranged so that its melody, harmony, and rhythm may be in accord with all of the people and the universe. Mr. Horace Silver, from the prologue of his autobiography, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Thank you. And now on to heaven. of Philadelphia in its infancy used to have a community of black cowboys. You know, I don't know if you're hip to that or not. Philadelphia had like rodeos. They had stables. They had yards where black folks had horses and all of that stuff. So Benny Golson wrote this tune. It's called Staple Mates. Staple Mates by Benny Golson. In this world, together we will roam. I know we won't ever be alone. I'll be right there by your side. In this life, we'll be side by side. Whenever you need me, I'll be right there for you. Believe me, you know that is true. If you look in for stability, you'll see indeed you should stick with me. I will never leave your side. In this life, we'll be side by side. In this life, we'll be side by side. In this life, we'll be side by side.
All right, thank you, Charles. Charles has been teaching jazz at Concordia College in Montreal for more than 40 years. He's played with all sorts of famous jazz musicians, and he's played with Motown and the Sound of Philadelphia. He's been around. Period. He helped he coached the trumpet player in the movie The U.S. versus Billie Holiday, and he showed the guy how he should look like he was playing, etc. And after he did that, he bought a summer house. So, that I'm going to go visit pretty soon. So anyway, now we have one more musical video. It's with James Whiting, who is Joyce and my godson. He's the son of the blues musician Sugar Blue. They live in Rome. For those of you who aren't blues fans, Blue also played harmonica on the Rolling Stones record "Some Girls," where he did the riff in "Miss You." Do 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 do. Okay. Guess who's the one with no musical talent whatsoever? But anyway, we should be able to play it. It's only a few 2 or 3 minutes long. Let's just say they couldn't be here. They wanted to just say something for Joyce.
Hi, Monroe. I just wanted to tell you, Joyce is my drawing inspiration. I've been drawing a lot because of her. She inspired me. I made this for you.
Joyce, we love you. You have been such an incredible and vibrant force in our lives, and we celebrate you.
I love you, Joyce.
All right, so now's the time we get to family. We've heard, Joyce had so many friends and people who felt like family to her and acted like family to her. But now we're getting down to the real deal. And, and to do this, we have Joyce's big sister, Yvonne Jones. She was a second mother. They're 8 years different, so she helped raise Joyce, and Joyce always talked about her. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here in Chicago, sort of, kind of, but at least we're coming to sort of, kind of, an end of a road. I want to tell Chaz that the Horsemen have a place called the White House, and they're teaching special needs kids in the village to handle horses, and that's this mandate at this time in Philadelphia. Now, I'm looking at everyone here, and I'm calculating how much money you owe me. Everyone here owes me at least 99 cents, up to $1, because if it wasn't for me, Joyce wouldn't be here. I encouraged her to run away from home because my mother was going to make her into a slave. She was going to keep her in Philadelphia for life. I told Joyce, get out of town. And she did, and I've been punished for that ever since then. I'm going to go back to the beginning and tell you, when Joyce came home from the hospital, my girlfriend, who is still my friend now, after a million years, because I'm 85 and she's 84, saw Joyce first. I was in line to jump rope, and things are very important, and it was my turn to jump rope, and Sandy saw her first. So sometimes I'm famous for that, and sometimes I'm infamous for that, but I still love Joyce. But everyone is talking about Joyce and giving her a lot of accolades, but I want to direct my talk to Monroe. Monroe, I love him so much. He went through hell. He fought like a dog. He went through there, before her, beside her, and back of her. He pushed and he pulled. He did everything he could for my sister. And when the crap hit the fan, and she really needed him, he did not shy away. Anyone who knows could not imagine, as laid back as Monroe is and appears to be, what a pusher and a puller he is. I love you, Monroe. I really, really do. And I want you to take me out to dinner for saying this. I love my nephews. And then I got a chance to meet Scott, brought his wife that I never met, and the little superhero, Nick and Simone. And of course, Kyle has his girlfriend. So I want everyone to know that this is a great day, but a sad day. And I want you all to remember that Joyce was Monroe's beloved.
I'll get my hug later, Yvonne. Okay, now we have coming up Scott Monroe Anderson, Joyce's firstborn.
Yeah, so I remember my mother as a caring mother that loved me and my brother Kyle more than anything in the world. We had a very happy childhood full of abundance. One of her favorite phrases was, "You can never have too many toys or too much jewelry." And we are still cleaning toys and jewelry from the house and trying to figure out how to deal with them as we speak. Let's see, obviously a lot of this tribute has been about her as an artist and a teacher, and I grew up immersed in that environment, so it instilled a passion for creativity and arts that still thrives today, 41 years later. In my career as a game developer and a software engineer, I've built tools for artists, I've made art myself, and also mentored and taught people on how to create video games and other digital media. It helped shape my career. Let's see, she taught us to be kind and treat others with respect. And especially as you saw from the video earlier, She clearly cared about diversity. She cared about equality and equity among people, and those lessons and that have stayed, and that's one of my core missions in life as well. She built a community of friends from a very early age. So we always had a strong community. We always had many friends. We always had play dates. Some of those friends are here with us right now in the audience, still, years later, decades later. Let's see, this came up a lot in some of the earlier speeches today. It doesn't, to me specifically, and I don't know how the rest of you all feel, it doesn't and hasn't always felt like she's gone. I live with my family in Oakland, California, so I don't see her every day, and I have not lived in Chicago for 17 years, so I haven't seen her every day, but I would talk to her often, weekly or daily for years. So it doesn't feel like she's always, or it doesn't feel like she's gone, but in a lot of ways she isn't. She's here with us in this room and with all of us in our memories, and she lives on and she'll continue to live on. Her final years were definitely a challenge, as mentioned by my aunt. My father went through a lot. The pandemic also, I felt, cut her time with her grandchildren, my son Nicholas and my daughter Simone, short. Even then, she still found joy in their presence. She got a chance to spend time with both of them in person, and for better or for worse, because of the pandemic, over Zoom calls as well. We all, I think, knew different versions of her throughout her life at different periods of time. And I think together, there's a larger picture, brought together by the people in this room. Thank you.
Joyce was a copter mom. She was just around her children all the time, raising them even when they didn't need raising. And the thing is, when Scott went to Whitney Young High School, and there was no way to get there no easy way, except to be driven. So Joyce would drive Scott and one of his friends, Sean, to school every morning. And she figured she had a captive audience. And so while they were still half asleep, she would give them these messages about, don't use drugs. and because that was of concern to her, they heard this almost every day. And well, I won't say if they've used drugs or not, but neither of them are drug addicts. and now we have our other son, Kyle, and they were with us. They were almost like just one unit. It would be Scott and Kyle this, Scott and Kyle that, Scott and Kyle. Although they're quite different in personality, but the thing for me is they're both very successful men who are very caring, and they're just good men. They could give Donald Trump a whole bunch of lessons.
Hey, hello. Um, it's a surreal experience to stand up here and look at all of your faces. Many of you I've known for my whole life or for decades at this point. So I'm really, before I even say anything else, I'm just grateful that you're all here and that we all get to be here together and celebrate my mom. Um, you know, I wish she could, and she, I'm gonna say I wish she could be here because she would be so happy to see this. But I'm sure she's hovering over my shoulder like Casper right now. As my father just said, she was known for that, known for that kind of thing. So if she is here, I, I know she's happy to see all of you here, happy to see all of our faces. We don't make ourselves as human beings. We always, again, I look out at all of these people, and I think about all the things that shaped me to get me to the point where I am today in my life. And all of you were in some way involved in that. So as many of you know, I make art. I make video games, actually, art for video games, and movies and stuff like that. But I'm also a Tai Chi instructor. And as part of my training to become an instructor, I did a Buddhist meditation on death, where you actually just envision all of the people in your life leaving, and typically in the most horrific ways you can imagine. And what it does is it just prepares you for the inevitable, that all of our lives at some point end. And as I was doing this just as part of my training. My teacher is insane, as you can imagine. As I was doing this, I wasn't really thinking about this moment where I was going to be standing on this stage talking about my mother. But as she was getting sick and going through everything that she went through at the end of her life, I really realized how valuable that training was, where I could just call her and spend time with her and experience those final moments with her with gratitude. And so I say all this to say that I'm really thankful that I had the experience to say everything that I wanted to say to her and to have all the conversations I wanted to have with her while she was still here. And to encourage all of us, while we're all here today in each other's company, to do that, just to really take in and really be grateful for this moment that we have all of us together in this room right now today. And just to, give each other hugs, right? It's like what he was talking about, right? So that's all I have to say. I'm really grateful for all of you. Thank you.
As Kyle just mentioned, Joyce's last year was difficult. She spent 6 months going crazy. She had Alzheimer's. And then she spent 6 months dying. And that was, for such a dynamic, wonderful person, it was not a good thing. It wasn't an easy thing to watch, and I can assure it wasn't a good thing for her to experience. But as part of it, she's in hospice for the last 5 weeks. And during that time, I had caregivers, and I was hoping that she would last longer than that, although when I brought her home, they told me she had a week, and she lived for 5. When it was obvious that there was hours to days for her to live, the hospice nurse told me that what we should do is tell her how much we loved her and appreciated her. Tell her that everybody was okay and safe, because a lot of times when people were dying, they try and hold on because they're worried about somebody and their family. And to tell her that it was okay to go. And so the night before she died, Yvonne was at the house, and I told them what I was told. And so Yvonne talked to her first and told her what she wanted to tell her. Then I put Kyle on speakerphone. He was in LA, and he talked to her. And then I called Scott, put him on speakerphone, and he talked to her. And then I told her how we had been together for 45 years. And I wish we could have more time, but we didn't. And so it was time for her to move on, that I wanted her to be my guardian angel, and that I would do everything within my power to make sure that she was a better known artist. And she was known, and a lot of you knew she was great, but I don't think any of us appreciated how great she was. And so this is why I've been running pictures of her art on my Facebook wall, just to show people how much range she had and how much depth she had. And I can't show you how prolific she was, but right now I have 120 pieces of her work at the house. And she's sold, if you go to Art Merjure, you'll see how many pieces she's sold. I mean, it's or some of these other places, just Google her. But anyway, we're here now because I just wanted one last affirmation, one last boost. Incidentally, this celebration is being live streamed right now, and it's going to be on the internet until the end of the year, this year. So if you saw anything that you wanted to experience again, you can do it. And the important thing is you can go in there and see 41 pieces of her art. And it dates all the way back to the 60s to now. It's a retrospective. Let me go back. Okay. The first time I saw Joyce, and this is amazing to me, I was married to my college sweetheart, Christine. She's there now. And there was a party at CBS, Christine and I. Christine worked for a radio station. I was working at Ebony. And there was this CBS party for black employees at the store. And so we passed through because we were doing a lot of stuff back in those days. And we passed through, and there were these two women there. They were both close to 6 feet tall. They were very light-skinned, but they had big afros, so you knew that they were black. But other than that, they could have passed. And they looked like Cupid dolls to me, literally. I mean, they just, they were that attractive, and I thought maybe they were models or something, but I was happily married. So that was just a moment in my life. Years later, my marriage came to an end, and I was sitting at this restaurant on Michigan Avenue. I forget the name of it, but it had a lower level where the bar was, and with plate glass windows, and you could sit outside at it and have a drink, which I was doing by myself. And I see Renee Ferguson. And Renee and I were the only two black students in the journalism department at Indiana University. Renee had been Christine's roommate at one point. And I didn't want to talk to Renee. Christine had just left me. And I was like licking my wounds and watching women as they passed by. And I see Renee in this moment. And Renee sees me, so she brings her down, and it's Joyce. So I'm not focused on, I really didn't want to, because they had been, Christine and Renee had been roommates, so I really didn't want to be entangled with that at the time. And so Renee is talking to me. She introduces me to Joyce. And Joyce is sitting to the side, and the plate glass window is behind me. And she could see me woman watching, because every time an attractive woman passed by, my attention went up instead of to them. And so that was that. A few months passed by, and I was really partying back then. I was hanging out. Discos were a thing, and I had gotten so much into discos. I was wearing disco clothes, so, a little bit frilly, a little bit, And so Renee became concerned about my becoming gay, and and she knows I have this philosophy that whoever you sleep with is your business, not anybody else's. I'm not anti-gay, never have been, but she was worried about my being gay. So she decides she's going to introduce me to Joyce. Joyce would be my savior. Okay, in the meantime, Joyce was married, getting divorced, from this doctor, Renee Earls. And so Joyce figured that the two of us Renee figured that the two of us make a great couple. The thing is, neither one of us was thinking about the other. So what Renee started doing was telling me that Joyce really, really wanted to meet me. In the meantime, she was telling Joyce that I really, really wanted to meet her. And she did this for a couple of months, just trying to get us together, to the point where we both said, okay, fine, like just to get her off our backs. And we had a date at dinner at Renee's house, and that lasted for 45 years. Yeah. And for me, with all long-term marriages, there's some ups and some downs, but overall, it was a wonderful relationship. And a couple of weeks after Joyce died, I called Scott. This is when I started doing the Facebook pictures of her art. I called Scott and I said, you know, I think we took your mother too much for granted. And he agreed. I don't know what else to say, but thank you for coming. And because sapphire and crystals and diaspora rhythms were so critical and important to Joyce, we decided to do this diametrically opposed thing, and that's having a celebration of life and having a fundraiser. So the money we raise, whatever it is, it's going to go for these sapphire and crystals to publish a tabletop book with their art in it, and there'll be some of Joyce's too, of course. And for the diaspora rhythms, they want a brick and mortar building, so they're raising funds for that, so that somewhere in the not too distant future, you'll be able to go there and see their work there instead of having to take tours to go from apartment to apartment to see their collections. Patrick, how many pieces of Joyce's do you have? 31 pieces of Joyce's art Patrick bought. Dan has not that many, but a whole bunch. I mean, these guys, first of all, as collectors, you go to their house, and you're just blown away with how much art there is. Patrick has art hanging off the ceiling and on the bathroom door. He has so much art. So anyway, what we're gonna do, I picked 6 pieces of hers that you can bid on if you'd like, if you're interested. And also, if you just want to donate on your program, there's a QR code on the back. So if you just want to donate a little bit to them, you know, $100 is fine, but 10 will work too. I mean, you know how big your purse is and how generous your heart is, so I won't deal with that. But we're going to have Candace Hunter, who's a sapphire crystal, as the auctioneer. But the thing is, putting this thing together was so overwhelming that I was still doing work on it an hour before we were supposed to be here. So what I'm going to have to do is tell Candace the names of the piece. Okay, you got me? Oh, okay, all right. See, this is why I was trying to figure out who to get to do this, and only one name came up. That was Kansas. He said, you gotta have Kansas to do it, and so here we go.
I got you.
Okay, great.
So, hello, everybody here. I'm going to ask
My name is Joyce Owens. At Chicago State, I'm known as Joyce Owens Anderson because I'm also married to a man whose last name is Anderson, Monroe Anderson, who's a journalist. And I have two sons who are named Anderson. My art name is the name that I started when I first started making art, when I was in school and after I was in school. So I didn't want to change my signature or my artwork, so I opted to be Joyce Owens professionally and Joyce Owens Anderson at other times. Are many of you actually considering careers as artists, as visual artists? Some of you are, and some of you are like some of the students that I have. I have students who are majors in criminal justice or majors in psychology and nursing and all kinds of other areas, and they want to experience visual art and they want to learn how to do some things. I think it's always very good because it helps you to understand your culture and respond to ideas in a different way than you do in many other classes where you actually write. So for me, I'm primarily a visual artist, but I also found out that I'm a writer too, and I've been writing a blog for a number of years. I call my blog kind of curmudgeonly. I really complain about what artists don't have, what artists should have, what some artists perhaps don't know. I try to explain. One of my goals, as I learn things, I realized that I would like to teach people all the things that I wish somebody had taught me when I was in school. A lot of things you can't learn in college. I mean, a lot of things you have to learn from practical experience. For me, the word and the image work together to make a complete package. I start painting, I have an idea, or maybe sometimes I don't have an idea. I'm interested in my materials. I like paint, I like color, I like stuff. So I walk up to a canvas and I start painting. I may not know exactly what I'm going to come out with. And as I work through it, I think. I go away from it, I come back to it, I go away from it, I come back to it. I might read something, I might think about a concept. There might be something that happens. There was a study repeated from the 1940s in the 2000s about a white doll and a black doll. And in the 1940s, when the African American children, young children, said that the white doll was the good doll, the white doll was the nice doll, the white doll was the pretty doll, I kind of understood it because it was before the Civil Rights Amendment was ratified in 1963. It was before, Martin Luther King, it was before a lot of changes in equal rights in the country. So I can understand that a child in the 40s might think that the black doll was the bad doll, the black doll was the unattractive doll. But I couldn't understand that in 2000. So as a result of that, I was so incensed by it that I made some dolls of my own that I called Girls Like Me, and they're dolls with afros and curly hair. And it was just my response to it. And so a lot of times I'm responding to political ideas, political concepts. What I find is that Woman Made exemplifies all the things that my mother told me when I was growing up that I should do. They volunteer, they support other women, they speak up, they do all the things that my mother told me that a woman should do. Until we don't have to talk about women's institutions, as we don't have to talk about men's institutions, when we can eliminate those things and women are just accepted as part of the fabric of fine art in the world, a place like Woman Made is going to be vital to the world and especially to us in Chicago. As we know in this country, race is a huge issue. For me, I had to deal with not only race but also women issues with being a woman. In the art world especially, that's one of the Girls Like Me. In the art world especially, I've been involved with the Women's Caucus for the Arts and a gallery called Woman Made in Chicago and other women's organizations. I'm part of a group called Sapphire and Crystals.
We're here today in one of your capacities as art director, curator of the Chicago State Gallery. Can you tell us a little bit about what's been happening here and why it's so exciting that people are talking about it?
Well, today, as a matter of fact, we're having an opening reception for Robert Sinstack, also known as Bobby Sinstack, whose family owned until very recently the Chicago Defender. He's a noted photographer. His photographs have been seen all over the world. We were able to get him to exhibit works.
You are, of course, a revered artist, professor, curator, and the list goes on. Many of the collectors and artists like myself respect you as one of our, I guess you would say, foundation iconic artists, living but still doing a lot for the community. What do you feel is one of the most important pieces or elements that Robert's exhibition brings to this gallery?
I think it's his exhibition, especially selecting images from the 60s and the 70s primarily, that include photographs of people that our students may never have seen in person, of course, but some of whom, like for example, Dr. Martin Luther King is presented in a couple of photos here. And of course, he died before most of our students were born. Then there's a photograph, and I asked a lot of the students as they were coming back and forth and I was working in the gallery if they recognize this particular person. There's a photograph of Joe Louis with the boxer, the Brown Bomber, with Fidel Castro. And so the question is, how did Joe Louis and Fidel Castro end up in a photograph together? Well, it was at the Bud Milliken premiere, where all kinds of amazing things happened. And I agonized. I was thinking about doing a painting of my mother, my great-grand-aunts. I was looking at Margaret Burroughs. I was looking at Black Venuses. I was thinking and thinking and thinking. But I was also reading a book about slavery and stories of slaves. And I was also reading a book about the secret codes in African-American quilts. The encoded messages that slaves presented to escape to the Underground Railroad and escape from the plantations. It's a fascinating book if you haven't read it, and it's just amazing. So I sort of incorporated the two things. I was in a book about the slave stories. There were pictures of these people who had survived slavery, and I'm telling you, it was just amazing to see them standing on their feet. I mean, like I just could, you can't even think, and I started this months ago. So when we had the World Trade Center and Pentagon occurrences, I was already involved in painting these. But I ended up entitling them American Heroes 1 and 2, Slavery Survivors, because even though I know this is a horrific event, we all know it's a horrific event, there were generations of people who lived horrific lives. And so when I saw these individual black and white photographs of these survivors, and they're standing there, their backs are straight, and they look human, I had to try to paint them. And I still, I almost want to take these back and work more. The women are really, I felt that we all talk about how spirits and all that kind of thing, and I did really feel a relationship to them, and that's why I decided to paint them. And the little squigglies and circles and triangles are taken from the quilts. Sometimes there were actually maps sewn onto the quilts because slaves didn't know anything but the plantation. They never left. They were born. Many of them were born on the plantations and died on the plantations. But those who wanted to escape had to know how to go. And so somehow outsiders got them the information. They made maps. They would show you which direction you should go in. If you should go north, there would be a configuration with brighter materials or more emphatic materials that would point north. If you're supposed to go west, all this information is on these quilts. And sometimes the quilts even look confused, and people assumed that it was sloppy handiwork, but it wasn't. It was every single thing was a message, and we can document it by looking at, I don't want to talk so long, so I'm gonna stop in a second. But we can document it. It relates to secret societies in Africa that existed in Africa. Some of the same symbology was found in there. And we see the Eastern Star. Yeah, you have to read the book. Okay, read the book. One thing I wanted to say, and I'll really shut up. I just have to read this one thing. Even though your stomach be full, and does you have plenty clothes, that bullwhip on your back hide make you forget the good part. There weren't any happy slaves. And so that's what my paintings are about.